everybody, it's jrobi. I wanted to do a quick video on a chess trap in the King's Gambit declined. And I've touched on the King's Gambit before in some of my other videos, in particularly my Exploring Bobby Fischer's video where I looked at his play as white in King's Gambit accepted lines. He was a very strong player as white in the King's Gambit accepted, and he won all of his matches in those lines except for one. But in this video I want to focus on black's position, and I want to talk about a possible trap that black has at its disposal. Now, as with all my trap videos, you'll probably find the most use for these in your blitz games. If you play these traps in standard matches where you have a lot of time to look at positions and your opponent has a lot of time to look at positions, they're less likely to succeed for sure. But this definitely has some merit in it, and the reason is because generally in blitz matches, if you're playing under really tight time controls, people don't take a long time to look at certain positions. And if they're unfamiliar with the position and it's new to them, they're much more likely to make mistakes or even just take material that you lay out for them as a trap. And in this position here, actually we'll just go back for those of you who aren't familiar with the King's Gambit opening. The King's Gambit opening goes pawn to e4, black plays pawn to e5, and then white offers up the gambit pawn, hoping to peel off one of black's center pawns. Now, in this position, instead of capturing, which is completely fine to do, by the way, if you're a black player, you can capture that pawn and maintain a very nice position throughout the whole match, if you're careful. Now, that being said, if your opponent is a really strong player in the King's Gambit accepted lines, and you're not, you'll have to be very careful with your positional play going forward, because there are some dangers in the King's Gambit accepted that you can get in trouble with as a black player if you're not familiar with them. But from here, we're not going to take the pawn. Actually, we're going to decline the offer, and we're going to play bishop to c5. Now, bishop to c5 is going to serve two fundamental roles for black. First of all, you're offering up a pawn for the taking. So bishop to c5, basically, you're leaving your e5 pawn unprotected. So if white wants, white can come in and capture this pawn for free in the current position. Now, more importantly for black, if white does come and capture this pawn, is that bishop to c5 creates a very strong presence along this diagonal, which is going to be key, as you're going to see as we go down the line here. So if white captures the pawn, black has a brutal attack that it can unleash on the enemy king, and that's simply queen to h4, delivering check. So black will come in and deliver the check, and white only has two choices. White can push the king to e2, but unfortunately after the queen comes to e4, it's checkmate. So what the white player will probably do in this position is play pawn to g3, at which point you can come in now and deliver just a deadly fork on the king and the rook. White will block with the queen, you can come in and take the rook, and White's most probable move in this position is to play knight to f3, and that's simply because white's going to try to capture the queen by trapping it in this position. But unfortunately for white, this bishop here on c5 is creating a very big problem for white. It's basically going to make white incapable of capturing this queen by trapping it. So this bishop here is serving a very important role in this position. So from here now, as a black player, all you need to simply do is develop another piece with knight to c6, because you want to maintain this bishop's presence along this diagonal, and now you get another piece into the play. And from here, white's now going to play pawn to c3, eyeing up d4 to remove the bishop's influence on this diagonal. And from here, you can play a nice little move, pawn to d5. White will most likely capture the pawn here, and even if it doesn't really matter, because what we're trying to do here is we're just trying to open up access to this diagonal to g4 for this bishop, because the bishop to g4 is going to force white to do a queen trade in order to take care of the positional problem that it's going to face. So from here, after white captures, or even if it doesn't capture, you can simply move the king off to f8, because the king is in check, and now white will try to succeed with its plan by blocking this bishop. But it's too late for white, because from here now you can simply play bishop to g4, and white is in a very dangerous position that basically forces it to do a queen trade. So from here you can trade the queens off, and now that the queens have been removed from the board, you can simply come down now with your bishop and capture on d6, and you're going to have a very comfortable game from this position. So what I'd like to do now is actually flip the board over, and we're going to take a look at the trap lines from the white player's perspective. Now if you're playing white and black goes into these trap lines, the best move in this position for white is simply to play knight to f3. And after white plays knight to f3, with solid positional play, white should have a fairly decent position throughout the match. And when I paired the computers off against each other in this position, white did have an advantage, and white got into the black castle position. But the good news for the black player is that it took white a long time to do so, and that's with perfect computer play. And even when white got into the castle position a little bit, the computer actually had the white queen peel off to regain the lost pawn that it had dropped earlier. So while there is some risk for black to lay out the trapping lines, it doesn't provide a crushing advantage for white right away. And that's good news for the black player if you want to try the trapping lines in your blitz games. So I enjoyed going over the video and hope you guys found it useful, and I'm definitely looking forward to your feedback on that, whether you use it as black or you see a black player use it against you and you counter with the knight to f3. So take care, hope you enjoy the video, and we'll see you next time.